It's not every day that you'll make a shocking paleontological discovery when you're out on a walk, but that's exactly what happened to Jose Antonio Neves when he went for a stroll on his family's farm on Christmas Day in 2015. The farm is in Argentina, just 25 miles south of Buenos Aires, but while the holding may be close to civilization, the discovery that Neves made was the stuff of bizarre and far distant past, and to begin with, he had no idea what the find was. Neves was close to a riverbank when he spotted a black, shell-like structure in the mud. Naturally, he got home and told his family about the discovery. My husband went out to the car, and when he came back he said, "Hey, I just found an egg that looks like it came from a dinosaur." We all laughed because he thought it was a joke. Neves' wife Rena Cornell told Associated France Press. The egg was mostly hidden in the mud, and so Neves wasn't sure at first just how big it was. But as he dug around the strange object, he soon realized it was huge, far too big for any dinosaur egg, indeed measuring 3 feet wide. What he had found was no egg at all. That said, what Neves had uncovered was still a shell of sorts, just not one meant for hatching out of. In fact, it was the armor of a long-dead mammal that lived way back around 10,000 years ago. Yes, the armor belonged to a genus of armadillo family ancestors called Glyptodon, which originally roamed the forests of the South American continent during the Pleistocene epoch. Fossils indicate that the animal looked like a flattened-out version of a Volkswagen Beetle and weighed just as much as said vehicle. And even better, Neves had found a shell that was still intact, a rare treasure indeed. In fact, the shell of Glyptodon can tell a lot about the animal's history, and like a fingerprint, each husk has a unique pattern. Indeed, the shell is really Glyptodon armor, which was used to deter larger predators interested in taking a bite out of the herbivorous animal. Larger Glyptodons tended to forage from many different types of plants, while the smaller species would have had more restrictive diets. Presumably helping towards such conclusions, fossils of these giant armadillo cousins have been found throughout Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. But Glyptodons relied on their armor for another reason as well. Each animal had also an armored tail, and paleontologists suspect that the creatures fought among themselves. To this end, each would have used its mace-like appendage to settle disagreements or even bash each other, giving Glyptodons into submission with enough force to break the other's armor. Of course, though, any way the shell was used, it was clearly an impressive piece of defensive hardware. Indeed, it took about 1,000 1-inch thick bony plates to form a Glyptodon carapace, and to support such a structure on their backs, the animals developed stout legs, fused vertebrae, and massive shoulders. With their hulking shells, it's been said that the Glyptodon bore a resemblance to turtles. Yet, while this may be so, paleontologists say the similarity is completely circumstantial, or more specifically, the result of the two very distinct lineages evolving similar methods to each deal with their environments. Curiously, in fact, the differences are more telling. For instance, Glyptodons don't retract their heads into their shells. Instead, each has its own helmet in the form of a bone cap at the top of its skull. Interestingly, the shell that Neves discovered displays some signs of damage, although scientists aren't convinced that it's the result of any past battle. Still, the shell does reveal some other interesting tidbits about this particular Glyptodon. For starters, the shell is smaller than usual. Talking to Mail Online, Dr. Bill Sellers of the University of Manchester explained that the carapaces of Glyptodons were usually twice this size, each measuring closer to 6 feet. But it's very likely that Neves simply found a juvenile or perhaps even a smaller example of the species. And though many often rightly question pictures found on the internet, experts who have viewed Neves' photo have supported his find as being authentic. For example, Adrian Lister of London's Natural History Museum went as far to tell Mail Online that it would be an ingenious hoaxer who would construct such a thing. In fact, it's the greenish tinge along parts of the shell where it was exposed to the river that provide the biggest clue to this Glyptodon being the real deal. As water pours past the banks of the stream such as this, it slowly erodes the mud. This in turn eventually leaves part of its fossils like the shell open to the elements, and the fluctuation in water levels leads to the discoloration seen here. Unfortunately, of course, we don't have any Glyptodon running around today to tell us more. Along with a lot of other giant animals, the genus began to die out toward the end of the last ice age. That was around 10,000 years ago, and it's likely that the specimen found at Neves' farm perished sometime around then. In any case, there's something sort of magical about Neves' discovery. Stumbling across the incredible armored remains of some long-dead beast while you're out for a walk sounds very much like the start of a science fiction novel. But there's an interesting, real-world message here as well. Sometimes we forget about what's under our feet. There are millions of years of history buried just out of reach, and the Glyptodon on Nevis's family farm proves that there's so much more just waiting to be discovered. So, the next time you're out for a walk, keep an eye on the riverbeds and in the long grass and on those muddy patches where no one else pays much attention. You never know, you too may find the armor of a long-dead cousin of an armadillo. Stranger things have happened.